Hey everybody, this is Ivan again with another short video. This one is going to be, I would say, my revelation on trusting. And today is Saturday, and it's the ending of what is called a feast day. I'm not sure if you guys know what feast days are. Feast days, essentially, what you can find in the book of Leviticus. Typically, the Jewish feast days. I believe anybody can actually celebrate the feast days. And so for me, I've just been researching them a lot because they're in the Bible. So if I'm going to read the Bible, why just skip over that, right? So learning about the feast days, there's a particular feast day which we're in now, which is the last of the fall feasts, which is going to be called Sukkot. It's also called the Feast of Tabernacles. It's a time in which it's a commemoration of joy and celebration that the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years and they lived in booths during that time. They were sustained during that period. They survived. They came out of that time period, Joshua's generation. They came out of that time period and then lived in actual houses. They received their own land at a period of time. So now they commemorate that history. We were in the wilderness. We didn't have our own land. We lived in booths. Now we have our own land. And now we're living in a safety and we have places to stay and things like that. So it's a time of celebration and commemoration. But what stood out to me is a couple of things. For one, these type of feast days are also called appointments, appointed times. And it's thought that these particular times are times in which you will have an appointment with the divine being, an appointment with God. So it's kind of why I've been studying them a lot, and then sure enough, as I'm looking into it this morning, I started thinking about it and just being really thankful about, where I am, my environment and things that are going on. And all of a sudden, boom, my understanding shifted and opened up to something I've never, ever saw before in this way, and made a connection to trust. So this is what it was. So I told you already, children of Israel were in Egypt in bondage and slavery for 430 years. They come out of that into the wilderness with no home, no place to call their own. There was no houses there, no apartments, no realtors. There was nothing. It was just wilderness. And they went out in the wilderness, but they were there for 40 years. During this whole entire period, they built places, they built tents, temporary dwelling places. Every time they shifted, they have to build a new tent or take that tent with them. So it was a very hard time. But watch this though. There were no stores there either. There was no food supply, essentially. They did have animals, but the food supply would go out. There was 2 million of them in the wilderness. But watch how they were provided for. There was something called manna. Manna was like a bread, but this bread fell down from the sky. And if you look up the word manna, it means, what is this? So they ate food that they didn't know what it was, but it was food that fell down from the sky, and which God was, during that period, producing a track record of him being a provider. So they would eat this food every single day. It would fall down for 6 straight days. Reason why 6 days, because there was a Sabbath day and God rested on the Sabbath day. So he also wanted them to rest and not gather up these fragments of this food on that particular day either. So the amazing thing is that they try to test God, and it will say it fell on a Monday. They'll gather it up and hold it for that Monday and try to save some for the Tuesday, and it would be spoiled the very next day. So God was telling them, listen, I'm going to provide you fresh manna, meaning that if I search him out and I need something for him, he's going to give me something fresh, something new, a new level of understanding, a new level of revelation to help me through this course of life. So this is what he did. He told them, do not rely on the old, but rely on the new that I will provide. Every day, 6 straight days, he provided this whatness, this bread from heaven that came down. So as it went on, 40 years passed, and without fail, this continued to fall until they entered into the new territory, which is the land of Canaan, crossing over the Jordan and the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey, which was a covenant promise that he made to Israel, that he would give them their own land. They enter into that land, and immediately this supply stops falling, because now they can eat from the fruit of the land. But another thing too that happened, it mentions in Deuteronomy chapter 29 verse 5, I'm going to leave all the scripture references in the description. It mentions that the clothes that they had on for their 40-year period did not even wear out. What? It also mentions that the sandals on their feet did not wear out. 40 years, and your clothing does not wear out, and the sandals that you have on your feet doesn't wear out as well, that shows that he's also a sustainer. So not only show he's able to sustain them, it also shows that he's a provider. And when I thought about that, this whole thing about something clicked, and I saw a child, newborn baby, breastfeeding. And a newborn baby breastfeeds every hour, however often it may be. Women may know more than I would how often a child eats when it's newborn, but this milk that's provided for that child. And then once that child is weaned off of the breast milk, you start going to baby food. When you go from the baby food, you go to solid food. There's never a point in time when that child is through those years that a child starts doubting that food is going to be available. That child always knows that food will be available, because this is what is learned ever since it was born, that there was always food present. So if you connect that illustration with what took place in the wilderness, without fail, God provided the food for them. He made sure that their clothing was even preserved that whole entire time in the wilderness. So how much more will he do for those that put their trust and faith in his son, Jesus Christ? How much more will he provide for us? How much more will he sustain us? We too are also in covenant with the same God that was with them in the wilderness. There is no difference. So when I thought about that, I was like, wow, and sometimes I fall into worry. Sometimes you think about certain things, whether it be family, whatever it may be, and this came to mind as I was meditating on Sukkot, meditating on these appointed times, these feast days. So I want to leave it there, guys. I hope this encouraged you. Maybe just encouraged me. Maybe it took my faith to a whole different level, like thinking about, wow, I'm going to totally and completely trust God for the rest of my days. And we say it a lot, right? I'm going to trust God, and then something happens, and then you're like, okay, God, you really going to come through? Just one too hard for you. It's like, guys, for real, God said he would never leave us, nor will he ever forsake us. It also, it's a point in scripture where he mentions, do not fear, believe only. And you also look at the accounts then when Jesus was walking on the water, meeting his disciples in the boat. He always had to tell them, do not fear, like it is me, or do not fear, God is with you, or ye of little faith, how long more shall I be with you? Hasn't he shown enough? Hasn't God shown enough? Hasn't he provided enough to give us the faith to believe that he will continue to provide? King David said, I've been young and now I'm old. I've never seen a righteous forsaken, nor his seed beg for bread. God is a provider. He provides for all, but especially those that put their trust and faith in him. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. God bless you guys. Love you all. Till next time, this is Evan signing.